It was just before midnight when my grandson called. His voice was trembling. "Grandma," he whispered, "whatever happens, don't open the door tonight." I smiled. It sounded like another bad dream. But when the lights began to flicker and someone knocked 3 times, slow and heavy, I realized the nightmare wasn't his. It was mine. If stories like this keep you thinking long after they end, stay with us, subscribe, leave a heart, and tell me where you're watching from. It was one of those nights when the wind sounds like it's whispering secrets through the trees. The kind of cold that makes every window creak, every shadow feel alive. I had just turned off the TV and was about to go to bed when my phone started ringing. It was close to midnight. No one calls me at that hour anymore. When I saw Noah's name flashing on the screen, my first thought was, something's wrong. My grandson, 11 years old, sweet as can be, but lately, a little different. He's always had these vivid dreams, the kind that feel too real. I answered, half asleep, trying to sound calm. "Hey, honey, what's wrong? Can't sleep?" His voice came through shaking, barely a whisper. "Grandma, don't open the door tonight. Promise me." I frowned. "What door? What are you talking about?" He sniffled. "The front door. Just don't open it, no matter what you hear." For a second, I thought he was joking. Maybe he'd watched something scary before bed. I laughed a little, trying to ease him. "Oh, sweetheart, it's just a bad dream. I'm fine, okay? Go back to sleep." But he didn't laugh. He just said, quieter this time, "You have to promise me." That tone, so serious, so sure, made me pause. "Okay," I said. "I promise." We hung up, and for a few seconds, I just sat there, staring at the phone. The air in the room felt heavy, like something had shifted, but I couldn't tell what. Outside, the porch light flickered once, then again. I told myself it was the wind, just the wind. I made some tea, tried to shake it off, but the kettle's whistle sounded too loud, too sharp. Every sound seemed to echo in that empty house. Then it came, 3 knocks, slow, heavy, each one louder than the last. I froze. I wanted to call Noah back, but my hands wouldn't move. The clock on the wall ticked louder and louder until that was all I could hear. 3 more knocks. Whoever, or whatever it was, wasn't leaving. My first thought was, maybe it's a neighbor. Someone needs help. That's what my husband, God rest him, would have said. He was a police officer for 30 years. Brave, steady. I could almost hear his voice in my head. Don't ignore someone in need. So I grabbed my robe, tightened the belt, and walked toward the door. My heart was pounding so hard, it felt like it was shaking the floor. From the peephole, I could see a figure, tall, broad shoulders, standing perfectly still under the porch light. His head was tilted slightly up, as if he knew I was looking. He lifted his hand. Another knock, not frantic, not polite, just deliberate. Something deep inside me whispered, "Don't." I thought of Noah's voice, trembling. "Don't open the door tonight." I took a step back, then another. The light above the door flickered again, once, twice, and went out completely. Darkness swallowed the porch. That's when I heard it. A low humming sound, almost like someone talking to themselves on the other side. But the words didn't make sense. It was too low, too distorted. The air turned cold, colder than before. I could see my breath inside my own living room. I backed up until I hit the kitchen counter. That's when the phone rang again. It was Noah. I answered in a panic. "Noah, what's happening?" He was crying now. "Grandma, is he there?" My throat went dry. "Who, sweetheart?" The man from my dream. He's outside your house." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I looked at the door again. The shadow was still there, taller now, or maybe closer. "How do you know that?" I asked, my voice shaking. He said, "Because the lights went out in my dream too." And then the line crackled. Static swallowed his words. "Noah? Noah." Nothing. Just that faint humming again. I hung up and turned every lock on the door. Top, bottom, even the chain. My hands were trembling so bad I could barely hold on. For the next few minutes, I stood there in silence. The wind outside screamed through the trees, but the house itself felt dead still. Then, nothing. No knocking, no humming, just silence. I waited, maybe an hour, maybe more. Finally, I sat down by the window, still clutching my phone like a lifeline. Around 2 a.m., the lights came back on by themselves. The porch light glowed steady, bright. The shadow was gone. By morning, I convinced myself it had all been in my head. I told Noah everything was fine, that Grandma was just being silly. But he didn't believe me. He said, "Grandma, you're not safe yet." I wanted to ask what he meant, but he hung up before I could. Later that day, the police came by. There'd been a break-in at the last house on the road. A woman who lived alone. She didn't make it. The officer asked if I'd seen anyone suspicious last night. I lied. I said no. Because if I told him the truth, he'd think I was crazy. But I know what I saw, or maybe what I felt. That man wasn't just looking for a house to rob. He was looking for me. And that voice Noah heard? Maybe it wasn't a dream after all. I still keep that porch light on now, every night. And sometimes, just before midnight, it flickers once, then again. When it does, I whisper the same words Noah told me. That night, whatever happens, don't open the door. The next morning felt like any other. Quiet, gray, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones before you realize it. I made coffee, fed the cat, turned on the radio. For a moment, I almost forgot about the call from Noah the night before. Almost. At around 9, there was a knock at the door. Not 3 slow knocks like before, just one, short and polite. I peeked through the curtain and saw a man standing on the porch, wearing a dark jacket with an electric company logo on it. He looked ordinary enough, clipboard in hand, tool belt around his waist. "Morning, ma'am," he said, smiling. "Sorry to bother you. We're checking on some outages reported in the area last night. Mind if I take a quick look at your meter?" Something about his voice was off. Too smooth, maybe. Too practiced. I hesitated, holding the door halfway closed. "I didn't report anything," I said. He nodded. "Yeah, it's probably just a system check. Only takes a minute." The porch light flickered once, and my stomach tightened. I didn't know why, but Noah's words came back to me clear as day. Don't open the door tonight. It wasn't night anymore, though. The sun was up. The world felt safe again, or it was supposed to. I opened the door, just a little. He stepped forward, not waiting for an invite. The smell of his jacket hit me first, like motor oil and something else, something metallic. His eyes scanned the hallway too quickly for someone just checking the power. "Meters around back," I said, pointing. He smiled again. "Right. Mind if I take a quick look at the breaker first?" That's when the phone rang behind me. I turned for just a second, and when I looked back, he was already halfway inside. Something inside me snapped into focus. "Sir," I said, "I didn't ask you to come in." He froze, then stepped back, hands raised like it was all a misunderstanding. "Of course, ma'am. My mistake." He left, walked down the steps, slow, calm, never once looking back. I locked every latch on that door. That night, I barely slept. Every creak made me jump. Every car that passed felt too slow, too close. Around 11:30, I dozed off on the couch, still clutching the phone. When I woke up, the morning light was spilling through the window, and there was a sound outside. A soft murmur, radios, heavy boots on the porch. Police. A female officer knocked. "Mrs. Brooks? Sorry to wake you. We're canvassing the neighborhood." "What's going on?" I asked, voice cracking. "There was a break-in last night," she said. "Down the road. Woman who lives alone. Do you know Mrs. Hill?" My heart sank. 3 houses down? She nodded. "Yes, ma'am." I'm afraid she didn't make it. My knees gave out, and I had to hold on to the table. The officer looked at me kindly. "We think the suspect might have been posing as a utility worker." I felt the blood drain from my face. "He was here," I whispered. "He was standing right where you are." She asked for a description. I gave her everything I remembered. The jacket, the voice, the smell, the way he moved. She wrote it down, expression tightening with each word. When she left, she told me not to worry, that they'd patrol the area all week. But worry was all I could do. After she drove off, I sat on the couch staring at the front door. The knob still had the faint print of his glove. I couldn't stop replaying it. The smile, the calm tone, the way he crossed the threshold like he already knew the layout of my house. Later that afternoon, Noah called again. I almost didn't answer. "Grandma," he said softly, "did you open the door?" I couldn't lie. "Yes, honey," but nothing happened. He left. Noah didn't say anything at first. Then he whispered, "That's not true." A chill ran through me. "What do you mean?" He told me about his dream, the same one he'd had for a week. In it, a man stood outside my house, knocking. When I opened the door, the clock behind me stopped at exactly 11:47. "It didn't tick again," he said. "Not once." I glanced at the clock on the wall, old and silver, a gift from my husband years ago. The second hand had stopped. I hadn't even noticed. 11:47. The number glowed in my mind like it was carved there. That night, I locked every door and window, drew every curtain. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been left unfinished. That somehow, by opening that door, I had invited something in that wasn't human anymore. The next few days passed in a blur. I saw more police cars in the neighborhood, more questions, more fear. Every time I stepped outside, people whispered. They looked at me like I was next. Maybe I was. I kept hearing my husband's voice in my head. "Trust your instincts, Eve. They'll save you when nothing else can." But instincts are funny things. They only work if you listen the first time. A week later, I drove by Mrs. Hill's house. The yellow tape was still there, flapping in the wind. Her porch light had burned out completely, leaving the whole place in shadow. And, for just a second, I thought I saw someone standing by her front door. A man in a dark jacket, holding a clipboard, staring straight at me. I blinked. He was gone. That night, Noah called again. He sounded calmer this time, older, somehow. "Grandma, I think it's over now," he said. "But keep the light on, just in case." I promised I would. And I have, every night since, even now. When the power hums low or the lights flicker for no reason, I whisper to myself, "Don't open the door," because deep down, I know the truth. He wasn't just at her house. He was here first. And if I hadn't listened to Noah, if I'd opened that door all the way, It would have been me they found the next morning. It started a few days after the police came. The neighborhood went quiet again, but not the kind of quiet that feels peaceful, the kind that listens. Every night, I'd hear something new. A creak in the barn, a latch that shouldn't move in the wind, the faint hum of an engine stopping just past my gate. The farm had always been my safe place. My husband and I built every corner of it, painted the fence, raised the roof, planted every tree. But lately, it didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt watched. One morning, I noticed boot prints in the mud near the storage shed, heavy ones leading straight to the back door. The padlock was still there, but the hinge looked tampered with. I stood there a long time, tracing the prints with my eyes, and I couldn't help thinking, what if whoever was at my door that night came back? I called my son Adam. He said I was imagining things. Mom, he sighed, you live in the middle of nowhere. Of course you'll hear noises. His wife, Harper, took the phone halfway through the call. Her voice was always too polite, too smooth. Evelyn, you've been through a lot, she said. You should think about selling the place. It's too much for you to manage now. I laughed, but it came out more like a growl. I've managed this farm longer than you've been alive. She didn't respond. Just said something about helping me transition and hung up. Later that week, Noah came to visit. I was so happy to see him. He's the only one who still looks at me like I matter. But he seemed nervous, glancing out the window every few minutes. What's wrong? I asked. He hesitated. Mom and Dad are talking about selling the farm, he said, quietly. They said you already agreed. My heart dropped. Agreed? To what? He looked away. They showed me papers. Something about transferring ownership. It had your name on it. I didn't remember signing anything. I hadn't even seen a lawyer since my husband died. After Noah left, I tore through every drawer in the study until I found a folder labeled Property Documents. Inside was a stack of papers I'd never seen before. One of them stamped Transfer of Ownership. My signature was there, in blue ink. Only, it wasn't my handwriting. I stared at that page for what felt like an hour. The name Evelyn Brooks glared back at me in a stranger's penmanship. The next day, I drove into town to see the bank manager. He was young, well-dressed, the kind who smiles without meaning it. He scanned the papers, nodded, and said, "Yes, Mrs. Brooks, the transaction has already cleared. The payment was transferred to the joint account listed here." "Joint account?" I repeated. "Whose?" "Adam and Harper Brooks." My chest tightened. I could barely breathe. "That account isn't mine," he frowned, clicking through his screen. "Well, it seems you gave your authorization, ma'am." I pointed to the forged signature. "That's not my handwriting." He gave me the kind of look people reserve for the elderly. Half pity, half dismissal. "Mrs. Brooks, maybe you don't recall signing." "These things happen." I wanted to scream. "I may be 64, I said, "but I've survived wars you've only seen in movies. Don't you dare tell me I don't remember my own signature." He blinked, unsure what to say. I took the papers back and walked out. Driving home, I kept hearing my husband's voice again. Never let them take what you built. But maybe I already had. That night, I called Adam. He didn't answer. I left a message, calm at first, then breaking apart by the end. "Did you sign my name?" I whispered. "Did you sell what your father and I worked for our whole lives?" No answer. The next day, Harper showed up. She didn't knock, just walked in like she owned the place. Her perfume hit me before her words did. Mom, she started. Too sweet. We're only trying to help. The market's good right now. You could live comfortably somewhere smaller. Easier. This is my home, I said. She smiled like she was speaking to a child. You'll thank us later. Something in me snapped. You forged my name. Her smile didn't move. You really think anyone would believe that, Evelyn? You've been forgetful. Adam worries about you. Forgetful. That word stung more than any insult could. I stepped closer until we were inches apart. I buried my husband on this land. I raised my son on it. If you think you can erase me with a piece of paper, you've got no idea who you're dealing with. She shrugged, still smiling. You can't fight a system that already signed you out. After she left, I sat in the kitchen until sunset, staring at the papers. The light turned orange, then red, then faded to gray. That night, I heard the barn door creak again. I grabbed my husband's old flashlight and went outside. The cold bit through my coat as I stepped across the field. The smell of dirt and hay filled the air. Inside the barn, everything looked normal until I saw the boot prints again, fresh this time, leading straight to the storage chest. The lock had been broken clean off. Inside, the metal box that held our old deed and insurance files was gone. I felt the world tilt. My whole life, my history, was being erased piece by piece. I walked back toward the house, trembling, furious. Halfway across the field, the porch light flickered. Then it went out. And in that split second of darkness, I thought I saw a figure standing by the door. I froze, the flashlight trembling in my hand. When the light came back, the porch was empty, but the door was ajar, just a crack. I stood there for what felt like forever, the night pressing against me. Then I whispered to myself, the same words Noah once said, "Don't open the door." I locked it tight. When I finally sat down inside, I realized something. It wasn't just about losing the farm. It was about losing the right to exist. That night, I made a promise. They might steal my name, my land, even my peace. But they'd never take my dignity. I spent the next morning sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of cold coffee and the forged papers spread out in front of me. The ink glared under the light, my stolen name staring back like an accusation. I'd gone over every line, every page, looking for something, anything, to prove it was fake. But the more I read, the more it looked like I'd signed away my life. By noon, I decided to get help. I called a law office in town, and a young man named Daniel showed up the next day. Shiny shoes, spotless briefcase, polite but impatient. He couldn't have been more than 30. He sat across from me, flipping through the documents with the confidence of someone who still believed the system worked. After a few minutes, he looked up. "Mrs. Brooks," he said carefully, "these papers appear to be legitimate. Everything checks out. The signature, the notary stamp, the registration." I shook my head. "That's not my signature." He gave me the kind of smile doctors use when they're about to deliver bad news. "I don't doubt you believe that. But unless we can prove someone forged it, officially, there's not much we can do." "Someone did forge it," I snapped. "My daughter-in-law, and whoever she paid to make it stick." He sighed. "If your family's involved, it gets complicated. You'd have to open a civil case, and that could take months, maybe years. My advice? Let it go. Save yourself the stress." That word, advice, hit me like a slap. Let it go? This farm was my husband's blood, my work, my story. Letting it go would mean admitting I didn't exist anymore. I leaned forward. "You're young. You think time fixes things, but time only fixes what you're brave enough to face. I'm not letting it go. He gathered his papers quickly, mumbling something about billing hours, and left. I never saw him again. For a while, I just sat there listening to the wind scrape against the window. It sounded like the house itself was whispering, "Don't stop." That's when I remembered Tom Gallagher, my husband's old partner from his police days. We hadn't spoken in years, but he was one of the few men I still trusted. I found his number in an old address book and dialed. "Evelyn Brooks," he said after a long pause. Didn't think I'd hear that name again. I told him everything. The papers, Harper, the bank, the useless lawyer. He didn't interrupt, just listened. When I finished, there was silence on the line. Then he said, "Give me a week." True to his word, Tom showed up 7 days later, driving the same dented truck he'd had 20 years ago. He sat at my table, spread the papers out, and frowned. "This stamp," he muttered, tapping the corner of the document. "I've seen this before." He looked up at me. "Evelyn, your daughter-in-law paid someone off. This notary's been flagged for shady transfers before." I felt a chill crawl down my spine. "Can you prove it?" "Not yet. But I can find out who signed off on it and how much they were paid." The next few days blurred together. Tom made calls, pulled strings, reached out to people he probably shouldn't have. When he came back, his face was grim. "You were right," he said, laying down a folder. Inside were copies of bank statements, emails, and one official memo with Harper's name on it. She bribed a local registrar, had him push your transfer through after hours. He signed off without you ever stepping foot in that office. I stared at the evidence. So it's true. The whole thing's built on a lie. Tom nodded. A legal lie, which is the worst kind. She covered her tracks. But if this goes public, she'll be done. The registrar, too. Before I could respond, the sound of tires on gravel made us both look out the window. Harper's car pulled up. She walked in without knocking, as usual. Her smile sharp as glass. "Mom," she said, glancing at Tom. "Oh, company. How nice." "What do you want?" I asked. "I just came to check on you. Make sure you're okay." "You've been making a lot of phone calls lately, asking a lot of questions." Her tone was sweet, but her eyes said something else entirely. "I know what you did," I said quietly. Her smile didn't move. "You're confused. You've been under stress. Stop talking to me like I'm sick." She took a slow step closer. "You can't fight what's already done, Evelyn. You'll only embarrass yourself and Adam." Think about Noah. At the mention of Noah's name, something inside me broke open. Don't you dare use him to justify what you've done. She tilted her head, studying me. "Then maybe you should stop before you make this worse." Tom stood up. "That sounds like a threat." Harper's eyes flicked to him, cold and amused. "I'm just giving her a choice." She turned to me. "You've lived a good life. Maybe it's time to let someone else take over." Then she left. The house felt heavier after she was gone, the air thick with what she didn't say out loud. Tom rubbed his jaw. "She's scared. People like her only talk like that when they know they're caught." That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my husband's hands, rough from years of work, handing me the keys to this place. "Keep it safe," he'd said. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. It was Noah. His voice was barely a whisper. "Grandma, I heard Mom talking to someone. She said you won't make it to next month." I sat up straight. "What? Who did she say that to?" "I don't know," he whispered. She was on the phone. She said something about finishing paperwork, then she laughed. My skin went cold. Noah, listen to me. Don't say a word to anyone else. Not your mom, not your dad. Promise me. I promise, he said. After we hung up, I sat there in the dark, the silence pressing in from all sides. For the first time since it began, I felt something stronger than fear. Rage. The kind that burns quiet, steady, patient. They'd stolen my signature, my name, my land. But they hadn't stolen my voice. Not yet. And I swore to myself, right there, that before this was over, I'd make them hear it. The invitation came as a text from Adam. Dinner tonight. Just family. Let's talk things through. Those words should have felt comforting, but I knew better. When people who've betrayed you suddenly want to talk things through, it's never about peace. It's about control. I almost didn't go. But Noah called, his voice small and tired. Grandma, please come. I don't like it when you and Mom fight. So I went for him. The house looked beautiful from the outside. Warm lights, music from the dining room, the smell of roasted chicken and rosemary. Harper always knew how to make things look perfect. The trick was, nothing underneath ever was. Mom, she greeted, all smiles. Her lipstick was too red, her tone too smooth. I'm so glad you came. We've missed you, have you? I asked, hanging my coat by the door. Adam stood behind her, quiet as always, avoiding my eyes. He used to look like his father. Now he looked like a man trying to disappear inside his own home. We sat down. Harper poured wine, refilled everyone's glass before anyone could refuse. Noah sat across from me, fidgeting with his fork. The meal started politely. Small talk about the weather, the neighbors, the new grocery store in town. Harper laughed at everything Adam said, even when he wasn't trying to be funny. It was all so rehearsed. Finally, she put her fork down and smiled at me. You've been under a lot of stress lately, Mom. We all have. Maybe it's time you let us take care of things for a while. I met her gaze. You mean, take everything from me? The room froze. Adam stopped cutting his chicken. Noah looked down, tears forming in his eyes. Harper didn't flinch. That's not fair, she said softly. We're doing what's best for you. You can't live alone out there anymore. It's not safe. I've lived alone for years, I said. The only danger I've ever faced came from people who claimed to care about me. Her smile thinned. You're letting your emotions cloud your judgment. I leaned back, my voice low and steady. And you're letting greed disguise itself as responsibility. Adam finally spoke, his tone shaky. Mom, please, it's done. The paperwork's already been processed. We can't undo it. I turned to him. You could have said no. You could have stopped her. He looked away. I didn't know it would go this far. Harper reached for his hand, squeezing it in plain sight. He did what needed to be done. That's when I realized. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. I put my napkin down and stood up. You both think you've won, don't you? That because you forged a few papers. You erased me. But you can't erase what built this house, the hands that worked it, the heart that held it together. Harper's voice turned cold. Don't turn this into a scene. I smiled faintly. Oh, honey, the scene already started when you lied. Noah's voice cracked through the silence. Stop it. Just stop. I turned to him. His face was red, eyes wet. They said you'd be happier if the farm was gone, he said, trembling. That you'd forget things soon anyway. My heart broke right there. Is that what they told you? He nodded. I reached across the table, my voice barely a whisper. Listen to me, Noah. Never believe anyone who says you're better off forgetting who you are. The minute you do, they own you. Harper exhaled sharply, pushing her chair back. This conversation is over. I stared at her for a long moment. No, it's just beginning. The sound of the grandfather clock filled the silence between us. Tick, tick, tick. The same rhythm I'd heard in Noah's dream, the one that stopped at 11:47. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of what came next. The rest of dinner was quiet. No one spoke. No one dared. The food sat untouched. The candles burned low. When it was finally over, Harper tried to hug me at the door, but I stepped back. Save that for your next performance, I said. Her eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. Outside, the air was cold and clean. The stars were faint, the kind of night where you could almost hear your thoughts echo. I stood there for a long time, staring at the horizon where the fields used to feel endless. From the window, I saw Noah watching me. I smiled at him, small but certain, and mouthed, "It's going to be okay." When I got home, I made tea, sat on the porch, and let the silence settle around me. For a moment, it almost felt peaceful again. The moon hung over the field like an old friend, reminding me of all the nights my husband and I sat there planning the future, never imagining our own son would sell it off like a business deal. But pain changes shape with time. It becomes sharper, clearer. And that night, as the wind brushed through the grass, I realized something. I wasn't broken. I was awake. I whispered into the dark, "You think I'm finished, Harper? You have no idea what I've survived." Then I looked toward the barn, the place where it all began, the stolen keys, the forged signature, the ghosts of everything I built. Tomorrow, I'd start again, not to win back what I lost, but to prove one thing. They could steal my land, but not my will. The music from their house carried faintly on the wind, soft, pretty, and hollow. I smiled to myself. Let them celebrate. Let them think they've won. Because the next move was mine. Noah showed up the next afternoon, quiet and pale, clutching something in his pocket. He waited until we were alone in the kitchen before speaking. "Grandma," he whispered, "I can help." I turned from the sink. "Help with what, sweetheart?" He took out a small black recorder, one of those cheap plastic ones kids use for school projects. "I can record her," he said. "Mom, she talks when she's mad. If she says something about the papers, we'll have proof." At first, I wanted to tell him no. He was just a child. He shouldn't have to carry any of this. But when I looked at his face, the same stubborn eyes his grandfather had, I realized he already carried it. I put my hand over his. "You're a brave boy, Noah, but promise me, you'll be careful." He nodded. "I'll hide it in her purse. She never checks." That night, I barely slept. The farmhouse groaned with every gust of wind, and every sound made me wonder what tomorrow would bring. By morning, Noah texted me one sentence. "She's leaving tonight." I didn't need to ask where. I already knew. The factory on Miller Road, the one that had been shut down for years, was the same place Harper's registrar friend worked out of. At 9:30 p.m., I parked a block away and walked the rest of the distance. The air smelled like rust and rain. The building stood like a broken skeleton against the night sky, tall, hollow, and echoing with things long forgotten. Through a crack in the wall, I saw Harper. She wasn't alone. The same man I'd seen in the papers, the official who'd signed off the forged transfer, stood beside her, holding a file. Once we shred the originals, he said, no one can challenge the sale. Harper crossed her arms. Good. I'm done babysitting that old woman. My stomach tightened. I wanted to step in right there, but I waited. Let her finish digging her own grave. Then I took out my phone, opened the camera app, and hit Go Live. The red dot blinked on. My voice was calm, steady. Harper Brooks, this is your mother-in-law. You're on camera, and I think everyone deserves to hear what you just said. She froze. Then she turned, that same perfect smile twisting into something feral. You wouldn't dare. Oh, I dare, I said. You taught me that. She lunged forward, grabbing for the phone. I stumbled back, but didn't drop it. The man beside her shouted, Turn that thing off! Behind them, the recorder, Noah's recorder, was sitting on a metal shelf, its little red light still blinking. You think anyone will believe you, Harper hissed. You're senile. You're desperate. Maybe, I said, but the police might believe the live stream. And the audio your son hid in your bag. Her eyes widened. What? The sound of distant sirens began to rise, faint at first, then louder, closer. She turned toward the door, panic flooding her face. You called them. I smiled. No, Noah did. She looked betrayed, not by me, but by her own child. That little, she didn't finish. The sirens grew louder, the red and blue lights flashing through the cracks in the wall. The man ran. Harper didn't. She turned on me instead. You ruined everything, she screamed, shoving me back against a support beam. The phone slipped from my hand, hitting the floor, but still recording. She raised her arm, but I caught her wrist. You weren't born cruel, I said, breathing hard. You just forgot what love looked like. For a second, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Confusion, guilt, maybe even recognition. Then the door burst open. Police! Hands where we can see them! The beam of a flashlight swept across her face. She froze. I stepped aside as two officers moved in. Harper didn't fight. She just lowered her head, whispering something I couldn't hear. When they let her out, the factory went silent again, except for the sound of rain hitting the broken roof. I bent down, picked up the phone, and saw the live feed still running. Thousands of viewers, comments flooding in. Justice! Stay strong, ma'am. That's her own daughter-in-law? I ended the stream and exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. Outside, the rain had turned soft. The kind that feels like forgiveness. Noah was waiting near the patrol cars, wrapped in a blanket one of the officers had given him. When he saw me, he ran straight into my arms. I didn't know I know, baby, I said, holding him tight. It's over. He pulled back, eyes wide. Grandma, you went live? I laughed softly. Guess I learned something from your generation after all. He smiled through his tears. You're trending. I shook my head. That's not what matters. We stood there for a while, watching the flashing lights fade into the night. The air smelled of wet earth and closure. Then I said, more to myself than to him, it's funny. People think justice comes from anger, but real justice comes from truth. He looked up at me. So, did we win? I thought about Harper's face, the fear, the regret. The moment her mask cracked. We didn't win, I said. We remembered. The next morning, I walked through the quiet house. The farm looked different now, still worn, still fragile, but alive again. The red coat by the door caught the morning light. I smiled and whispered, We're home, Frank. We're finally home. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, tucked between grocery ads, and a dentist reminder. At first, I almost threw it away. No return address, just my name written in shaky cursive. But something about it stopped me. Maybe it was the ink. It looked hesitant. I opened it slowly, sitting by the kitchen window where the morning light hit the table. The first line read, "Mrs. Brooks, I owe you an apology." Her name was Rachel Cooper. I didn't know her, but as I kept reading, my chest tightened. She wrote that she used to work at the bank, the same branch that handled the sale of my farm. She said she'd been there the day Harper came in, waving those forged papers around like they were gospel. I knew something wasn't right, the letter said. Your signature looked traced. The notary number didn't match. And your eyes in the ID photo didn't look like someone who'd just given everything away. I read that line twice. It was such a strange thing to write, but also the most human thing. She saw something the system didn't. Rachel went on. I wanted to speak up, but my supervisor warned me. You'll lose your job. Don't get involved. So, I stayed quiet. But that silence has followed me every night since. I kept a copy of the real authorization form, the one you never signed. I couldn't bring myself to destroy it. I sat there for a long time, staring at the letter. The paper trembled slightly in my hands. It wasn't anger, I felt. It was something gentler, deeper. Relief, maybe, gratitude, and grief for how many people live with secrets they wish they'd undone sooner. The letter ended with, I watched the live stream. I saw the truth come out. I'm not asking forgiveness, but I hope this helps close the wound I helped open. She'd included a small envelope inside. When I opened it, there it was, a photocopy of the real document. My name unsigned, clean, untouched. I traced my finger over the blank line. It felt like breathing again after being underwater for too long. Noah came in, holding his tablet. Grandma, are you okay? I smiled through tears. Yeah, sweetheart. Someone just remembered what doing the right thing looks like. He tilted his head. Is it from Mom? I shook my head. No, but from someone brave enough to face what she did wrong. He sat beside me, resting his small hand on mine. Does this mean we really get to keep the farm? It means the truth has a way of coming home, I said, softly. Later that afternoon, I went out to the porch. The sky was heavy with clouds, the kind that hold rain but don't quite let go. I read Rachel's letter again, this time out loud. To the open fields, to the wind, maybe even to my late husband. I wish you could meet her, Frank, I whispered. You'd like her. She's proof we're not alone in this world, even when it feels like it. For the first time in months, the farm didn't feel haunted by betrayal. It felt protected, somehow. A car drove past slowly, a neighbor, maybe, or a stranger. Either way, I waved. Funny how that small gesture felt like forgiveness, too. When I went back inside, I pinned Rachel's letter to the fridge door, right next to Noah's drawing of the two of us standing under the big maple tree. One woman's quiet courage had changed everything. Not in court, not in headlines, but in the way it healed something invisible between people. I poured 2 cups of tea, one for me, one for no one, and said softly, "Thank you, Rachel." Because sometimes justice doesn't come from the loudest voice in the room. Sometimes it comes from a whisper that refuses to die. The morning after Rachel's letter arrived, I walked through the house in silence, the kind of silence that doesn't hurt anymore. It just breathes. The air felt lighter somehow, like the walls had stopped holding their breath too. I made coffee, the way Frank used to like it. Too strong for most people. The red coat hung by the door, still smelling faintly of cedar and rain. For months, it had been a symbol of everything I'd lost. That morning, it felt like something else, like a promise kept. Noah came running in from outside, muddy shoes and all. "Grandma, the horses are back by the fence," he said, grinning from ear to ear. "The neighbors letting us keep the gate open again." "Is that so?" I asked, smiling. He nodded, then looked around the kitchen. "It feels different in here," he said softly. "Not scary anymore." I glanced at him. "That's because truth has a way of cleaning the air, sweetheart." He sat at the table, swinging his legs. "Mom's gonna be gone a long time, huh?" There it was, the question I'd been avoiding. I took a deep breath. Maybe, but time has a funny way of teaching people. Sometimes it's the only teacher that works. He looked at me with those big eyes, searching for something I couldn't quite name. "Do you still love her?" I turned toward the window, watching sunlight spill across the fields. Love doesn't just disappear, Noah. It changes shape. Sometimes it hurts. Sometimes it heals. But it's still there. It just learns to live differently. He thought about that, then smiled a little. "Dad said he wants to come visit soon." "Good," I said. "This place could use a few more honest hands." After he ran back outside, I stood by the doorway for a long while, listening to the wind move through the trees. For the first time in years, it didn't sound like morning. It sounded like music. I walked over to the coat rack and lifted the red coat, the same one that used to remind me of fear, of loss, of that night I almost opened the wrong door. I brushed the dust off the collar and hung it back neatly. "Maybe surviving isn't winning," I whispered. "Maybe it's remembering who you are when the world forgets." The kettle whistled softly, and I poured another cup of coffee, this time not rushing anywhere. The news had already spread around town. People were talking about the live stream grandmother, about courage and betrayal and justice. But none of that mattered to me. What mattered was that the land still stood, the boy still laughed, and the past, finally, had a place to rest. That afternoon, Noah and I went out to the field. He ran ahead, chasing sunlight through tall grass, his laughter echoing through the open air. I sat on the porch steps, closing my eyes, letting the sound wash over me. Somewhere deep down, I knew Frank would have been proud. Not because I fought back, but because I found peace without losing myself. When Noah called out, "Grandma, look. The sky looks like it's smiling." I looked up and saw it, streaks of gold breaking through gray clouds, light spilling onto everything we thought had been lost. For once, I didn't think of what came next. I just breathed, and in that breath, I realized survival isn't about outlasting pain. It's about outgrowing it. People think age makes you small, that it makes your voice quieter, your choices softer, your fight slower. They think we fade into the background, like old photographs left in the sun. But that's not what age does. Age sharpens things. It strips away what never mattered and leaves you face to face with what does. It makes you see who's real and who just played the part. I used to think surviving meant outlasting the pain, but I learned it's about standing up after it, even when no one's clapping, even when you're the only one left who remembers the truth. When I look back now, the forged papers, the lies, the nights I thought I was losing my mind, I don't see weakness anymore. I see proof that love doesn't vanish when it's betrayed. It transforms. It gets quieter, wiser, and harder to kill. Noah still runs through the fields like the world's brand new. He laughs from his gut, loud, unfiltered. Every time I hear it, I know everything I fought for was worth it. Not the farm, not the land, but the chance for him to grow up knowing what honesty looks like. People ask me sometimes, "Do you regret forgiving her?" And I tell them this: forgiveness isn't letting someone off the hook. It's cutting the rope that keeps you tied to the pain. So no, I don't regret it. I'm too old to carry bitterness like luggage. I've got better things to hold, like peace and maybe a little pride. Because after everything, after being erased, betrayed, and written off, I'm still here. I still get to wake up, pour my coffee, hang my red coat by the door, and call this place home. That's survival. And if you've ever been underestimated, pushed aside, or told your time has passed, maybe you already know what I mean. So I'll leave you with this. Have you ever been written off and proved them wrong?